Oh, give thanks to the Lord. Call on his name. Make known his deeds among the peoples.
Sing to him. Sing praises to him. Tell all his wonderful works.
It's good to be able to greet you this morning on this rather nippy Sunday morning, on Epiphany Sunday. And if you're visiting with us, let me extend a special greeting on behalf of the congregation. We're happy that you're here. Certainly hope you enjoyed the service and that you do come and worship with us again. A couple of things that I want to call to your special attention from the bulletin. Then we do have a special announcement and also some things which are not in the bulletin. First of all, I want to thank Flo Bickel for filling in for Marilyn. Marilyn invariably gets to the end of the year without using all of her vacation Sundays, so this year was no exception. So she is not with us today, but we're so fortunate to have Flo who is able to fill in for her. So we thank her for that. We also welcome Adrian Ortega back to the chapel. Adrian, as many of you remember, before he went to Boston to continue his music studies, was our baritone section leader. So he's going to be our soloist this morning. He's been singing with us over the Christmas holiday, and we're happy that he's again visiting at home to share his talents with us. It's been an interesting week. Last week I announced to you that I was not going to shake hands because Lorraine had come down with a really lousy case of the flu, and I said that I apparently had missed it. Well, as Donald Trump once said, and then said, wrong. So it's been really quite a week. And in addition, just to make it more interesting, I decided on Wednesday morning to get a case of AFib and wind up in Morton Plant Hospital overnight on Wednesday. So everything's fine. I'm feeling good. The flu, I think, is gone. I'm not taking any chances, though I'm still not going to shake your hand this morning because you don't want it. And with that AFib, they were thinking that the flu exacerbated it, so there you go. But hopefully everything's fine. I had a bunch of tests, and I should at least make it through the morning. So if you thought it was going to be a short sermon, forget about that. We're feeling pretty good today. The other announcements, don't forget that the annual meeting is going to be held on January 29th. We announced it numerous weeks before the event. Very important. It's generally a very short meeting. It'll be after church in here, but it's a very important meeting. At that time, we'll be electing members and officers of the church board for next year. We'll be passing a budget for this year, and other orders of business to come before the body at that time will be taken care of. So please, mark your calendars and be ready for that. Also, you know that we have a number of programs, particularly in education. We've got the story, which continues. The information is there on your insert. Living Waters, there is a program tomorrow night as we continue with our life series on metamorphosis. And then Joe Cregan has planned a kayaking outing. His timing is lousy in terms of getting you enthusiastic about kayaking today when the temperature is like in the high 30s. But anyhow, it is coming up. The information is there. So if you're at all interested, please call Joe, call the office. Let them know that you are interested so that something can be put together. And if we have enough who are interested, you will get a discount on the kayak. So Joe can give you more information and just contact him directly. I think we're all set then. The Bible tells us in Ecclesiastes that for everything there is a season. Well, we know, for instance, that when it starts getting cold, it's winter season. We know that when they start playing Christmas music in the mall in September, Christmas is on the way. And when either Fred Bickel or Rick Owens get up here to talk, we know the Beach Walk is right around the corner. So Rick has some information to share with you this morning.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it very much. I'd like to welcome each of you this morning to the official opening of the 2017 8th Annual Beach Walk. There are a copious amount of details in your bulletins. Suffice it to say, after the service, Jan Bickel will be in the foyer, and myself, Jan will be doing volunteers. I'll be signing up walkers, sponsors, whomever. Jan asked me to mention that if you've signed up as a volunteer verbally, you're good to go. You're on the list, so don't worry about that. It's interesting to note, I think, with the Beach Walk, last year we raised well over $14,000. And these proceeds go to Religious Community Services, RCS, and directly benefit both the RCS Food Bank and the Haven for Domestic Violence. So it was definitely a job well done by the congregation and our supporters. The auction, we are actively seeking auction items. Now, normally at this juncture, Fred Bickle would jump up here and do his bit. And Fred is indeed here. However, his voice is on holiday. So I'm going to fill in with a few comments. We've kind of restructured the auction this year, and we're targeting items in the $75 to $100 category or higher. Higher is better. We like that. So it was very successful. Fred is the maestro of the auction. Last year, under his direction, we raised over $3,500 with the auction alone. So, and that is over 20% of our total, and it represents also the fastest growing segment within the Beach Walk Walk. I've got two special announcements today. We are in need of volunteers. We need 8 to 10 people on the Saturday prior to the beach walk. This would be January 21. And the purpose is to assist Joe Cregan in the coach to distribute hand flyers door to door on island estates and the beaches. Again, 8 to 10 people would do it easily. It takes about 2 to 3 hours to complete. So I just look at it as some nice exercise in a beautiful setting and fresh air, and go for it. Secondly, we need 4 people the day of the event. These folks would assist Terry Schmidt, who's the guy who does all the logistics, the clock, etc. But we need 4 monitors to be placed along the course. So if you'll see me after, that is much appreciated. Late-breaking news. For the first time ever, I heard last night that we will have a drone. And so for the first time, I'm going to get to see the whole race from like a 100-foot angle. And I'm just really excited. This should be spectacular for our background footage. So thank you. We wish you all great camaraderie, fellowship, and fun on the day of the event.
Good morning on this crisp Sunday morning, but I'm glad to see we have a nice crowd. If you'll join me in reading responsively the invitation to celebration. We have entered a new year and face an uncertain future, but we realize that it is a future filled with possibilities. How will we face this future? We will face it with the assurance that we will not be alone. God has called us to live life to the fullest and as productively as possible. So we come to worship, so we can express our gratitude as we seek what we will need to become all we can be. Let us call upon God in unison, God of the past and the present and the future. We leave our everyday lives, even if only for a short while, and come here seeking quiet, peace, support, renewal, and encouragement. Indeed, we seek you and anticipate finding you in those around us, even as we hope they can find you in us. As we face the difficulties that come into every life, grant us strength and courage to overcome them, and the grace to help others with their problems. Show us that every cloud has a silver lining, and point us in the directions you would have us go. Now listen as we end our prayer with the words given to us by Jesus. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Truth, my life, such a way as gives us breath, such a truth as ends all strife, such a life as killeth death.
As we start a new year, we always think about planning ahead, what we want to do to change. And I'd like to encourage each one of us to take a moment and renew our commitment to our church, both in our spirit and in our financial abilities. So let us be generous this morning with our morning offering.
Some of us have put away our Christmas decorations for another year, O God. And some of us have not, still hanging in there just a bit longer because we love the glow and the beauty of the event and want to enjoy its symbols for a while yet. But the tree is browning and the poinsettias are wilting. We don't have much longer. And yet, the feelings are still there, vibrant and strong, feelings of peace on earth, goodwill toward men. Will they remain with us, motivating and inspiring us when the ornaments are boxed and the tree is trashed? Or will we pack them away too, these feelings of love and compassion, for another year, while we get on with our lives, waiting for the next holiday to encourage us to think as we ought to think, act as we ought to act, be what we ought to be? The Magi followed a star to Bethlehem in search of the Christ, but it did not take them a few days to get to their destination. It took months, perhaps years, but they continued on their lengthy trek. Christmas for them was not seasonal, it was all-consuming. It was always. At this time, with Christmas behind us and Easter before us, grant us the kind of vision and courage and faith displayed by those wise men who were wise enough to look for you in their world, by seeking you without regard for what it might cost them, and finding you where they probably least expected to. And then as we return to wherever, by whatever way, enable us to live as those who have seen you manifested in and through the Christ. Live in peace and with love. So we pray together, and now silently and reverently, we pray our own prayers of promise and petition. Amen. This morning I want to read to you from the Gospel of Matthew, that portion of the Christmas story which involves the wise men. I'm reading from chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet, and you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly called for the wise men, and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star until they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. Let's think about these things as we continue together in our worship this morning. There's a new television show with Michael Weatherly called Bull. In this series, Weatherly plays a psychologist named Bull who helps lawyers pick juries which will be favorable to their clients. And of course, all of the clients that Bull helps are innocent. In a recent episode, the jury's verdict concerning a man's guilt revolved around whether or not he had seen a particular highway sign. During cross-examination, he admitted that he could not remember. He finally won acquittal because it was shown that he did not remember because the sign was inconsequential. It did not matter enough to be remembered. Strangely enough, and in a convoluted kind of way, this reminded me of the Magi in the Christmas story, a portion of the total story which teaches numerous lessons and offers many meanings. Think about what Matthew has to say. He identifies time and place. They came to Jerusalem when Herod was king, seeking directions as they neared their destination. And the author refers to them as wise men from the east, who, while studying the heavens, detected a star that they had not seen before, decided it announced the birth of a king, a Jewish king, and determined to follow it to its source so that they could pay homage to the one whose arrival it proclaimed. Herod did not at all like the idea that another Jewish king had come upon the scene, but wanted to find out all that he could so he could deal with the perceived threat. Therefore, he called together his advisors, especially the religious ones, in an attempt to discover where this Messiah might be found. They searched their scriptural scrolls, there reading verses predicting the coming of such an individual, and as a result of their study, declared that all signs pointed to the Messiah being born in Bethlehem. So they told the Magi in so many words, "Go to this little insignificant village just south of Jerusalem, and there you will find him." We know how this part of the story ends. They took the advice they had been offered. They found Jesus with his parents in Bethlehem. They presented their gifts, 3 of which are named. They paid their respects while offering their adoration. The only other detail provided is that they decided to go home by a different route so that they didn't have to travel through Jerusalem, since they simply did not trust Herod. Now that's all pretty straightforward, don't you think? But something about the entire episode really strikes me. The Magi were very excited by their discovery. To be sure, they studied the heavens on a regular basis. Apparently they were astronomers and astrologers. And so they were in a perfect situation to see this new heavenly body, whatever it was. Did I say they were excited? That's an understatement. They were so excited, they were so convinced, they left everything and took off, determined to find the source of this wonder. Can't you hear them explain their actions? We've studied the sky for years, night after night, the same old, and then suddenly there it was. A new star, a special star, the star of a king. They were breathless with anticipation and expectation as they asked Herod for help. Now, with all that said, how come nobody else seemed to see the star? And if they saw it, how come they did not get nearly as excited as the Magi? These foreigners, these Gentiles. Beyond that, and even more confusing, how come Herod's advisors, those scholarly Jews who had themselves been awaiting the arrival of Messiah for decades, for generations, for centuries, did not get excited by what the Magi told them and go with them on the little jaunt of about 5 miles to what could be the wonder of wonders, the answer to their prayers, their hopes, their dreams? Didn't happen. Instead, they could have been that voice that talks to you from your GPS. Go south for 4 miles, turn right at the Shell station, and continue for 1.6 miles, turn left. Your destination will be on your right. Maybe. Emotionless, matter of fact, monotone. They missed it. Even when the Magi arrived and pointed out some things to them and they finally saw a star, after all their anticipation regarding a sign proclaiming the coming of the Messiah that they had been waiting for, they missed it. God was just down the road, but they missed the turn. Indeed, they missed more than the turn. They never left for the trip. Are we not sometimes in danger of experiencing the same problem, particularly at this time of year? All the signs point to the Christ of Christmas, but we don't see him. We get too caught up in what has become Christmas and its aftermath that we miss the Messiah. The noise, the hurry, the crowds, in all the shuffle of the season, we end up like those in Herod's court, surrounded by the signs of the coming of Christ, and yet we miss him. The defendant in Bull did not see the highway sign because it was insignificant. The signs that point to Christ were not and are not insignificant, but we miss them anyway. It's like being careful about too hurriedly throwing away the torn wrapping paper on Christmas morning. It might contain a present that was missed. We don't want to dump the gifts with the garbage. All the hubbub of Christmas can be like that old wrapping paper. Useful at one time, but dangerous when it covers up the real gift. It's also a bit like driving home for the holidays and getting so wrapped up in seeing the sights that have meaning for us that we miss a turn or two. We get distracted by the non-essential and go right past our destination. The Magi never lost their focus. And their finding the Christ leads us to another message of this part of the Christmas story. A message which tells of the Messiah coming to Jews and Gentiles. The Magi were the first non-Jews to see Christ revealed in the babe of Bethlehem. This was one of God's ways of making himself known to us, all of us, as he comes to us in the encounters of our lives. God met the wise men and led them by their star to a place where their lives could be changed and their paths would take a new and different direction. God comes to everyone, not just special people, chosen people. He comes to all people. And so the mission of Jesus Christ was to the whole earth. And aren't we, like Jesus, called to minister to everyone, even if they are not like us? The tale is told that Cecil B. DeMille, during the filming of his classic movie King of Kings, realized that the crucifixion scene was taking place on December 24th. On the spur of the moment, he, who seldom said much during filming, called for silence on the set. Stepping in front of that rough crowd of extras, deliberately chosen from the city's less desirable areas so that they would look more authentic in their roles, announced that they would take 5 minutes for prayer and meditation. Seeing the initial sneers and snickers and figuring the cast would perhaps just take a cigarette break, he thought that he had made a mistake, but followed through nonetheless. He bowed his head and closed his eyes. Suddenly, someone from the motley crew began singing, "It Came Upon the Midnight Clear." Then dozens, then hundreds took up the song. DeMille looked up and saw that while some were still singing, others were kneeling beside the 3 crosses on the set, tears of remembrance streaming down their hardened faces. There are many places to look for the one who came to bring good news to the entire world. The Magi found significance in a star, a light so rare and so brilliant and so different that they felt it would lead them to the newborn king whose birth they believed it heralded. The star went unnoticed by so many others, perhaps because they were not trained to see such things. But we all have stars that we ought to follow. Where have such significant and symbolic events led us, if we, like the Magi, had the courage to react? In hope, they took off on their quest, but it led them on the way to one who reacted with fear and fright. Which responses will be ours when confronted by God in whatever guise he comes to us? Will we be like the Magi or like King Herod, receiving our Messiah in wonder and hope and faith, or in fright and rejection and fear? After the Magi found Christ, they departed for home by another road. They were changed men. Being with Christ does that to people. What are we like after this happens to us and we return to our places? Are we somewhat uncomfortable with people who still clutch their gods of race, nation, creed, possessions, power, pleasure? When we are back in the old places, ready for more rounds of whatever it is we do on a daily basis, do we even realize how much of our lives are alien to the one placed in Bethlehem's manger and killed on Calvary's cross? Who knows what those Magi saw when they encountered Jesus? Could they possibly have foreseen the future? Regardless, they realized the significance of the present, their present, and instinctively knew, I think, without having any details, that a man dying for others on a cross is stronger than all the powers that conspire to take his life then and now. It frightens us to see our old ways and ideas turned upside down. If we take all this seriously at this time of year, we might wonder if it is a birth or a death which we celebrate. There is gospel in the visit of the Magi. Christ's birth and death are good news, for these events give us spiritual strength and wisdom to die to our alien gods. How wonderful for us so long after the happening to find both birth and death in the manger and return to our own countries by another way. As God comes to us, to all people, in and through Christ, so all people can act in the name of God by emulating that Christ, just like the Magi did. Don Ashmole, recently retired council minister of the International Council of Community Churches, shared a Christmas message, a seasonal message with council churches and centers 2 years ago. I'd like to read it to you. The journey continues. We are trudging through our own wilderness, where some die and some live, where some of what we treasured is left behind and the rest is at risk, where the end of the journey is yet to be known, and where the destination is likely to be other than what we hoped for. We are tired, we are weak, and we are very, very worn. They tell us that Bethlehem is where we are headed, but Bethlehem is not a destination. It is instead a stopping place along the way to what we most fear and what we most desire. They tell us that a king is there, but what kind of king gets born in a barn? They tell us that there is to be peace on earth, but we live in an age of conflict. They tell us the best gifts are gold, frankincense, and myrrh. We cannot afford gold. Walmart has no frankincense in stock. As for myrrh, if we didn't have spell check, we couldn't even spell it correctly. Isn't there another and better gift we could give? Something more personal and intimate that issues from the heart? We've made the pilgrimage before, or at least we told ourselves we did. But this time we know that the journey must be one that covers ground inside ourselves and outside too. We want to experience the presence of the Christ child, and we know that presence won't be genuine unless we make it real in acts that let his presence shine through. We're on pilgrimage, and while on pilgrimage, all things are tentative and becoming, here and not yet, emerging and still to be fulfilled. As pilgrims along the way, we struggle with our own weakness, with our unresolved doubt, with all the ailments of body and soul that afflict us. So why then pursue the pilgrimage? We have set forth together because we cannot still our feet. We are marching toward Bethlehem because for us there is no alternative. We have followed the star because we cannot deny the vision. In all our frailty, all our failings, all our imperfection, we are on pilgrimage toward Bethlehem. We cannot make the journey alone. We need one another. So then, holding hands, linking arms, and lifting up our feet together, we move in faith toward the Christ child. On pilgrimage toward Bethlehem before Christmas, during Christmas, after Christmas. And like the Magi, we do not go alone. We go together with others of like mind and faith and spirit. We go together with others who are the same and yet different. We go together with others from all over who also seek God with us. Why do we go? Because we have to. I want to close this morning with a beautiful little piece written by someone named Alice Schweikart, a woman who lives in Colorado. It was included in the monthly newsletter of the Community Church of East Williston, New York, and gives us our marching orders as proclaimed disciples of the Christ. Those who have seen the star know what it symbolizes and are committed to following it, not just at Christmas and Easter, but all year, every year. From the crest of a hill, I look down on a gleaming panorama, a city dressed for Christmas. Before me lay the jewels of civilization, a million facets of light against the velvet curtain of night. I could see the tallest pine tree in the city park, lifting its sparkling branches heavenward, topped by a large, brilliant star. In a distant valley, the cross atop a rural church added its luminous beauty to the night. A star, a cross. Without the cross, the full meaning of the star would be lost. The star was the bud, the cross, the full-blown flower. The story of a babe born to a virgin in the caves of Bethlehem while angels sang in shepherds' worship would never have been remembered and retold nearly 2,000 years later had not the story culminated in a cross. It took love and its power and a sacrifice to give the star its eternal light. The Christ child in the manger can stir deep emotional tenderness in our hearts, but the cross with its deeper significance can bring us to our knees. We marvel at the secret beauty and sweet loveliness of the child asleep beneath Bethlehem's star, but are filled with awe and reverence when we behold a grown-up Christ turning a wooden cross into a sacred beacon. God's gift to mankind was the gift of love that brought with it hope and purpose of rebirth in the resurrection. When the colorful splendor of lights created by humanity are dimmed at the close of the holy season, let us not grope in darkness, but take up our individual crosses and by the light of the star, follow in the footsteps of the Christ. The Star of Bethlehem and all that it meant and means. How could they miss it? How could we miss it? Christmas is over, or is it? as we leave this place may be with a commitment to ever seek those stars that manifest the presence of God in our world, and then to follow them. And in our efforts, may the Lord bless us and keep us. The Lord make his face to shine upon us and be gracious unto us. The Lord lift the light of his countenance upon us and give us peace, both now and forevermore. Amen.